Good afternoon. My name is Sheila Lamb, and I'm with the Virginia SBDC Network. For those of you that are not familiar with our organization, the Virginia Small Business Development Center is a partnership program between the U.S. Small Business Administration, George Mason University, and local host institutions throughout Virginia. With 26 locations across the Commonwealth, we provide training and technical assistance to small businesses in their local communities. Our one-on-one advising services are available at no charge. Today's webinar, Franchising 2: Trends, Opportunities, and Obstacles, is presented by the Virginia SBDC Network with FranNet of Virginia and DC. We are recording today's presentation and it will be posted on our website, virginiasbdc.org. Due to the expected large number of participants, everyone's microphone is muted and the chat feature is turned off. But if you have questions during the presentation, you can type those into the Q&A box, and we will address them at the end of the session, time permitting. We have also enabled the live transcript function, which you can show or hide via your own meeting controls. And now it is my pleasure to introduce our speaker for today, Heather Rosen, President of FranNet of Virginia and DC. Heather is a franchise specialist from longtime SBDC resource partner and the creator of the SBDC's FranFit program, FranNet. Heather began her career as a lawyer, advising businesses on contractual matters and litigation strategy, and then ran marketing and business development teams for large international law firms. In 2009, she left legal services to go into business for herself through a franchise. Now the owner of 2 franchises, Heather conducts franchise education workshops for the Virginia SBDC and several other organizations. I'm sorry, I lost my place. So I'm now the owner of 2 franchises. I've already said that. Oh my gosh, I need another cup of coffee. So Heather provides coaching on how to make the transition from employee to entrepreneur and offers guidance to people researching full-time active, semi-passive, or large-scale area development franchise opportunities. Heather, I'm just going to say I'm ready for vacation.
Right.
So I want you all to please welcome me and join me in welcoming Heather Rosen.
Well, thanks for the kind introduction. I am happy to be back. I think some of you might be joining us after last week's session on Franchising 101. We're offering these two, I think, every quarter. And this one changes. This is my favorite presentation to do because every quarter I take another look at what I've said is happening in the industry and I update it because there are new opportunities. There are certain things that are that were opportunities in the past and no longer are opportunities because there's already so many businesses that rush into the space. So if you are watching this presentation today and you're not ready to do a search, you're thinking this is something maybe you'll do in the future, please come back and watch this again. It'll be a different presentation. And as Sheila said, I work through a company called FranNet, which is a matchmaker of sorts. They are, for me, a research company. They research franchise opportunities. They are the oldest and probably the best known company, kind of like the Merrill Lynch of the franchise industry, which gives me up-to-date intelligence on franchises so that when I talk to people about franchises that they should start researching and teach them how to research them, I'm using up-to-date data, which is really important because just like any company, there are certain things that impact the company changes, and we always want to make our best recommendations to people when they're looking to go into business. So I'm going to take you back now to February of 2021, which is the middle, but it's towards the end of the pandemic. In February 2021, we had a vaccine, but only older people could get it. And so the rest of us who wanted the vaccine had to wait. So we knew we were coming out of COVID, but we weren't quite out. Most of us were still mostly home, looking around our homes, going, gee, I can't wait until I can get out into the world again and life will return to normal. So I actually did programs throughout the pandemic. A lot of the government agencies had me speak about how franchises were, I'm going to bring that word back, pivoting as a result of COVID. Because franchises were getting together, the franchisees and the corporate offices were getting together and working on solving the problems of how do we get to our customers? How do we deliver the same products or services or something that people or businesses were willing to pay for, given the fact that most people wouldn't leave their homes. So they got together and they tested things, figured that out. And I would report to audiences like this what was happening, what franchises were doing, because they were making changes a lot quicker than independent businesses. And actually, I had a lot of independent business owners join my webinars back then. So I started speaking about what was happening, the rapid changes and the rapid response that franchises were making to COVID. And then by February, when we knew we were coming out of COVID in the next few months, I started saying, look how things have already changed as a result of the changes, as a result of people starting to leave their homes again. Where were the opportunities? So this is what I was saying back in February, and I'm going to go through this because I'm going to tell you that almost all of this actually happened. Give myself some credibility here. It really did happen. So I said that people living at home meant that that construction companies that would work on home projects were getting more business. It was actually very, very hard to have somebody come to your home to fix appliances. Homeowners were having outdoor patios. We did this, constructed so that they can get together safely with their friends. And so I said that, this is going to this is going to continue to be a big opportunity because people have already started spending more time at home and they're interested in, or at least seeing themselves as continuing to do that. Also, construction companies were considered essential businesses. So they were some of the first businesses that were able to resume operations during COVID. I said that there was going to be an increased demand for pet care and supplies because there were a lot of people that adopted pets during the pandemic. I also said that pet daycare was going to boom because now people are able to travel again, and Fido has to stay home. Um, Childcare. A lot of people had kids during COVID, education gaps, the kids that they had, if they were in school, a lot of kids did not pick up as much, wouldn't learn very well working from a laptop. And they're kind of related because a lot of the childcare businesses have an education component. So I said, this is an area that is going to experience a huge demand. Personal recovery, people who let themselves go during COVID. They weren't fit anymore. People, sitting at home, not getting out and doing things. A lot of people gained weight. They weren't going to the doctor because they were afraid to do that. And then appearance, personal appearance, a lot of people let themselves go. Hair, eyelashes, eyebrows, etc. And I said there was going to be a huge demand as a result of this for personal recovery services. So if you're thinking about opening up a business back then, I said you really should think about offering one or more of these services. And related to that is dating. Only online dating was happening for the most part during COVID. And I said, as people start feeling comfortable to leave their homes again, you've got to somebody has to create a space for them to go. Dining, but dining plus entertainment. A place where somebody could go and linger and get to know somebody who they're meeting for the first time or the second time. And related to that is restaurants, because a lot of times there is a food component of dates. But restaurant models changed a lot during COVID, and I'll talk about that in a minute. Fundraising businesses. I don't know if you realize this, but a lot of not-for-profits did very poorly during COVID because they were used to raising funds by holding events, which of course they couldn't hold by during COVID. So I said, if you had a business that helped other businesses, not-for-profits, including schools, raise money, that would be a really good space to be in. Cleaning businesses. Cleaning businesses have always been used. Most of those did not get impacted too much during COVID. Um, as long as people, I mean, the cleaning businesses had to operate differently in order to keep their employees safe, of course. But cleaning businesses were still used, especially on the commercial side, but even on the residential side. But now, because of COVID, we started talking about air cleaning, air cleanliness, because of course, COVID was transmitted through the air primarily. So I said that was going to be a big opportunity for people going into business. And I said there was going to be more of a continued discussion about essential. You want to be an essential business. When I first started advising people on franchises over 16 years ago, I talked about recession-resistant businesses, businesses that really, even if there was a downturn in the economy, that either people or businesses would have to continue to buy these things. Essential businesses, it's almost the same businesses, but certainly during COVID, what we were talking about are businesses that had to keep running, even though it was recommended that the business did not continue to operate because of safety reasons. So I said that I think there's going to be more awareness of essential. I think today it's a little bit of essential and recession resistant. There's more of an awareness of costs going up, and as a result of that, your customers not having as much disposable income. So maybe we're back to talking about recession resistant, but what I'm saying is it's really the same thing at the end of the day. Retail businesses, the retail businesses that got hit the hardest during COVID were the ones that were relying on walk-in traffic because, of course, people weren't walking anywhere. They were staying home. And so I said there was going to be more of an emphasis on retail businesses doing digital marketing, couponing, etc. Possibly more interest in outdoor businesses, since a lot of us had become accustomed to meeting with people, getting together with people outdoors. And so I said, a lot of businesses, if they had an outdoor space available, I felt like if you're starting a business, if you have an outdoor area, that's going to be something that is going to help you as a business in case people, for whatever reason, even if they're sick, don't feel comfortable being in close quarters with somebody they want to meet with. Smaller spaces. A lot of businesses regretted having a larger space during COVID because their margins were so thin. And so I said there's going to be another, a renewed focus on, can I offer this product or service or these product or services in a smaller space if I need a space at all? Because maybe I don't. And then the last two things here with the asterisks, I thought businesses were going to be more um, uh, they were going to be better at having contingency plans now that they knew what this sort of new worst case scenario COVID could do to their business, and then less reliance on one or two customers, because as a business, you're very vulnerable. The less customers you have, the more vulnerable you are. If your customer goes away, that's going to have a huge impact on your business. And the asterisks are here because of all of the things that I have listed here, I see less of that. There's not a lot of that happening. I'm not hearing it anyway among business owners. So for those of you who are on this webinar, please keep this in mind. It's always good these are sort of basic rules of business, is you always want to have contingency plans. What if this happens? What if that happens? What if the internet goes out, etc. And that you never want to rely on one or two customers. I feel like a lot of people in who are government contractors and consultants, this is their weakest place, is that they've got one or two customers, and as soon as those contracts are gone, as soon as their customers' contracts are gone, they're going to be, they're going to have to do something completely different. They're just not going to really have a business or enough of it. So here's what's changed over the past 5 years. So much. We came out of COVID starting in around May or June of 2021. Banks had seen a lot of businesses go under. By the way, most of the franchises survived, or the franchises survived, and most of their franchisees survived. And again, I feel like that is in large part to franchisees testing different marketing programs, the franchisor helping out too, because the franchisors are motivated to help the franchisees because they're looking for royalties to come in. When you are a business owner, ideally, when there's a big problem, you don't want to be the only one responsible for solving it. You're going to be much better off if you have a team of people who are working on solving the problems together. But the banks saw a lot of the businesses that had SBA loans and other small business loans fail, which made the SBA loan approval process much longer, harder to get a loan. Loan origination rates to the SBA program, I believe they were had been eliminated. They came back. Retirement fund portfolio values went down, and then they go up and down and up. I mean, it affects the funding environment. It affects the way that people fund their businesses, and I'll talk more about this. We have had a lot of mergers and acquisitions and private equity investing in franchises. There's this sort of, I don't want to say consolidation, because it really doesn't look that way on paper, but it is kind of that. And what I mean by that is there are experienced franchise companies that have brought some of the younger, smaller brands, or brands that were struggling in some cases under their umbrella. I don't know what their exact investment structures were. They don't typically share that. Sometimes they do, but there's been a lot of money coming into franchises. And again, I'm going to talk more about this, but it's really actually been a very positive development in the franchise space. Now I would say most jobs that were 100% work from home are not 100% work from home. There are very few companies now where people have the kind of flexibility that they had during COVID. And then a lot of jobs are gone. The unemployment rate is way up. People who still have a job are there's a lot of pressure being put on them to perform because it is a seller's market. Companies, they have already slashed salaries. Because there are less jobs. There are more people looking for jobs. They can get better talent at less cost, which is obviously a terrible thing if you are still hoping to get a job as an employee. However, for businesses, this is a fantastic time because your businesses are starting to be able to get a lot cheaper labor. But in general, the cost of over the past 5 years, costs of everything went up. Like I said, the cost of labor is actually coming down, but the cost of everything else is way up. The cost of commercial real estate is way up. And that has been, I'm going to tell you what the impact has been on business because of that. Um, Now, during COVID, as horrible as it was, a lot of people, most people said, I really liked working from home. And part of that was the flexibility. A lot of people were working from vacation rentals. They were out in Montana and working with a beautiful view outside. But also the people, they were able to spend a lot more time with family members. And now, 5 years later, a lot of people with kids, the kids are in college or out of college, and there's people long for that. They miss, as horrible as COVID was, again, they miss that special time that they had with their kids before the kids flew out the nest, left the nest. More customers over the past 5 years. There are more pets, more kids, more unhealthy people, more stressed out people than ever before. Um, which is an opportunity. I think there's still a greater awareness of climate change. Doesn't matter what you think is causing the climate change, man-made or not. There is climate change. Weather events are undeniably stronger, more violent, hotter. Those of you who were in the DC and Richmond area last week with the 101, 102-degree heat waves. I mean, these are record numbers. So things are hotter, there are more bugs, and there's more property damage from these things too. And again, I'm not saying this as a gloom and doom. I'm talking to you as prospective business owners. These all create opportunities for businesses. Office buildings. So even with the hybrid work arrangements, office buildings are still mostly empty. People are in a lot of jobs working from home 1 or 2 days a week. With the cost of real estate, commercial real estate, and residential real estate much higher now, a lot of companies are looking to shrink their office space in order to manage their costs. So some of these spaces are already converted or in the process of converting to residences. And I'm going to talk to you about the impact this does. This impacts other businesses as well. And of course, the undeniable impact of artificial intelligence and federal work and federal contract cuts has had a huge impact on not just the job market, but also on businesses. But for franchises in actually a positive way. So as a result of these changes, because of the funding environment, because it is a longer process and a more expensive process to get loans, first of all, when people buy franchises, if they have applied for an SBA loan, the franchises now will sometimes accept a deposit as long as you can prove that your loan application has been submitted. By the way, you're going to submit your loan application after you have a franchise agreement in place. So franchisors are taking deposits pending the approval of the loan. A lot more people are looking at other ways of funding their business, one being a HELOC, a home equity line of credit, using your home to fund your business, take out a loan that way. And a lot of people will say, well, I don't want to do anything that's going to impact my property. They don't realize you're going to sign a personal guarantee if you take out an SBA loan anyway. Home equity line of credit gets you lower closing costs and a lower interest rate. And also you don't have to prepare a full business plan in order to get approved. It's a simple loan, secured loan. And then more people are using rollovers from qualified funds, retirement funds, IRAs, 401ks. It is money that you already have. They're trying to time it with the stock market. When the market goes up, they'll pull out some money, put it aside for the business, leave some money in the stock market. But you're able to do that even with retirement funds and without incurring taxes or penalties, because ultimately you're going to keep the shares of your business still inside your retirement account. And that is, and I'm not a CPA, but I'm told that when you sell your business, it also protects it against capital gains tax. So it's a little bit of a tax strategy, a lot more. This has been around for many years, but more people are looking at it now because of the higher cost of getting a loan to fund their business. The mergers and acquisitions, as I said, and the private equity investment has been a very positive development. What has happened is you have more experience and talent in the headquarters group. The people who are working for you are more experienced, have more years of experience in franchise space, maybe in a related type of franchises. We see, for example, franchises that have been working with a lot of different types of service businesses bring in other property services businesses, and there's a common back end too, which means that if you want to expand your business, it's not just hoping that there's territory available that you can grow into, but a lot of times you can look at another service business within the same family. And it's not a hard business to launch because everybody's using the same back end system and it's the same people that you're working with. So that's a really exciting development that several of my clients have taken advantage of. Also, so as a result of COVID, shortly after COVID, I got a lot of calls from people who said, "Hey, life is returning back to normal. I'm still working from home. Can I start a business?" And at the time, some of the franchises were willing to talk to them because they felt like just working from home itself gave them a lot of flexibility. Now it's more challenging with more and more people getting called back into the office. So you have less people who have 100% remote jobs. Jobs are harder to find, which means there's a lot more micromanagement, stress to perform, um, because you're replaceable and probably replaceable with somebody who makes a lot less money than you do. So it's harder for people to start businesses while they have a day job right now. I mean, it can be possible, but you have to be very, very careful that you're not getting into something that really does require a lot of your time. And if you really did put that time into your new business, you would probably lose your job. So make sure you don't get into that situation. And I find that, some franchises will talk to you about that. Others, they feel like, hey, this is something, I don't know what your work situation is. This is your call. So, you want to protect yourself. We want you to only get into business when we think you can really do that successfully. So that is going to be a more recent factor that you should stay aware of. And with the cost of a lot of goods and supplies being higher, the cost of commercial real estate being higher, and still labor costs in a lot of cases are higher than they were before the pandemic. I'm specifically thinking of hourly labor. A lot of those hourly job rates went up during COVID. Thank you to our essential workers, which is great, but obviously that impacts businesses negatively. I mean, franchises they know how to pass cost increases on to customers. Again, you have a lot of people who are looking at this problem and saying, how do we deal with this increased cost, right? But you also want to keep in mind, you can pass cost on to customers, but at some point your customers are going to say, what are we really getting? And you're seeing this impact the delivery services right now. Your DoorDash, Grubhub, Uber Eats, those businesses, the cost of getting food now is much higher in almost every case than it was during COVID because of the cost increases, the cost that, the tariffs, the cost of all the things that restaurants have to buy. At some point, the customer says, I'm not doing it. I'm not gonna, or maybe I'll only get this service once a month where I was getting it every week during COVID. So as a business, you have to be aware of what your customer is getting. And, the franchises discuss this all the time is how do we make sure that what we're selling is something that the customer really feels like they're getting the value from. It's worth the limited disposable income that they have. And then with less people going into an office, think about vending machines. Since I started advising people on franchises, I always get questions every year, at least a few questions about vending machine. But think about what happens where do you put vending machines generally? You put them inside office buildings. This is, the most reliable place to have a steady stream of customers coming by and buying. People need a midday snack, right? Or maybe they buy their breakfast out of vending machines. But with less people going into an office, um, it impacts the vending machine industry. So there is a 2.0 or 3.0 version of a vending machine. It's like a smart market almost, where you can sell almost anything. It's almost like a mini retail store. It's a thinking outside of your box solution to vending machines. Yes, you can sell candy and gum, but you can also sell other things that people have to buy that live or work nearby where your machine is, and you can change it out. It's not just snacks because the machine is able to sell almost anything. There are some machines out there that are selling art. I mean, again, thinking outside of the box, how do I meet my customer where they are? And a lot of this is being discussed already in the franchise space. I mean, there are franchises where not just the franchisees, but the corporate office too is looking at data, looking at numbers, and saying, what is the highest seller and where do we have to, with different types of product mixes in the machines, and what is the best space to put the machine so that we get the product mix. You may not be able to figure that out, and you may end up spending $20,000 on a machine, and you end up making $1,000 a year, which would definitely not be a good return on your investment. So other recent developments, all of the job cuts, and people knowing that the cuts are coming. There's some people who, they already know their company is relocating or scaling down, or they've lost a contract, and so they've got to cut because they don't have the seats for people to sit in anymore at the client site. As a result of that, you have a lot of high paid people who are now looking at an alternative to their space. And of course, a lot of people in the IT space are impacted. It's not just the IT space. But higher paid people who are getting great paychecks and benefits, there isn't the work anymore. Or there's the work that there is contract work, which is short term, not as high paying. As a contractor, at least you have a little bit more flexibility, and I'm getting a lot more calls from people who are in this space. They've got a contract, the contract is ending, they don't know what work is going to follow that. But because they're a contractor, they have more control over their hours, and some of them are starting businesses. But not everybody can do that. And so in response to that, there have been discussions and developments in franchising around converting independent businesses that already have customers, that already have cash flow, into the franchise in order to increase the sales. There are franchises, actually a few of them, that have an in-house team that will find acquisition targets for you, again, where there's already revenue coming in, and they will turn around the business. They'll help you acquire it at a fair price because they're in the industry. They know what a fair price would be. Turn it around by implementing all of the vendors and the systems that the franchise offers so that you can recoup your investment quickly and make that business earn even more money. Few franchises are also offering group health insurance. Most of them can't. It's not a choice for them, but there are a few franchises that, because of the way they're structured, you can actually also join their group health plan. So this helps people who need to transition very quickly into an income positive business. New customers, there are definitely more pets and children. I have not seen any data on this next point. I believe that there's a lot of movers. It's anecdotal. I'm seeing a lot of things, more things listed on Facebook Marketplace for sale. The movers, when you call them, I'm actually in the middle of a move, the wait time is crazy. You have to wait for them to call you back. I think a lot of people are going to be downsizing or relocating or both, because of, I mean, it's sort of the natural process, people retiring, but I think there's also a lot of people who are retiring early or moving to a different market because of all the job cuts. It would have to happen that way. And then, of course, you have, people who are moving into areas where there's some new industries, with defense being, seeing a lot of the work in the DC area in the defense space. You're going to have people who are moving in, their families are growing. That's happening too. But the point is that there are a lot of movers. That's a huge opportunity right now. People who are selling their homes and moving. Um, Definitely more health and fitness needs. This is a continuing trend. Since the pandemic, in the franchise space, there are more businesses that meet this need, but of course it's a really, really big need. More pain relief because people let themselves go. Weight loss is still, with the GLP-1s. We're talking a lot more about weight loss, but not everybody has success with that. And so there are franchises that are meeting that need another way. And then there's been a renewed focus on people who are 50 and above, because we can't work out the same way that somebody in their 20s does. I mean, there are a lot of places that have a really intense workout where, we are, especially if someone like me, we're not at our peak fitness right now, we would be injured pretty quickly and then never be able to go back or never want to go back because we don't want to be injured again, right? And so there are some franchises that are specifically focused on recovery, on 50 plus. And that is a growing area, which is the need for that is only going to increase. Um, in the workplace, you can tell your employees they have to come back to the office more days. Young people are generally okay with it, but older people, your more experienced employees, typically would prefer not to. And so you still have to, as an employer, solve the problem of getting your employees to want to come back to work, because otherwise the minute a remote job opens up, they're going to leave you. I mean, you want to recruit well and retain well. So that creates an opportunity for business coaching franchises that provide social events that makes people want to interact with their colleagues. Some of them will offer another kind of, employee perk like fitness or massage. That is in the franchise space as well. And you still have to make your employees feel safe so that if they do come to work, you have to show them that we are maintaining the workplace such that the air is still clean, the surfaces are still being cleaned, so that if you do come to work, you're not going to get sick. And obviously that's for the employers too, because you don't want your employees calling out. Climate change has created huge opportunities for businesses. There's more franchises that are offering eco-friendly options, that use products that do less harm to the environment, less harms also to pets and to children. There's a greater awareness, I think, because of COVID, of recycling, the need to recycle, the need to more people care about not putting things in the landfill, because we discussed that at length during COVID. And they see the climate change and they think maybe, I'm not sure, but maybe it could be because of the landfill. We gotta, what do they say? Reuse, recycle, and one of the things I can't think of right now, renew, reuse, recycle. More demand for property repair. Absolutely. Property, paint, damage, trees down, electrical problems. This space is essential. It is recession resistant, maybe even recession proof. but climate change kicks up the need even more. That's an excellent space to be in if you have a business. Um, and more franchises are trying to help the franchisees out by giving them the work-life balance and flexibility that they may have had during COVID. There are a lot of franchises that can be run from a laptop, which means work from home or work from your VRBO rental. Franchises sometimes have a staff that provides services to you, or they have a company of contractors that you can plug into. Their vendors, they're managing them, they're helping you negotiate a fair price, so that you can more as much as possible run from a phone and a laptop. Could be an excellent way to have that work-life balance, which is it's all but elusive if you're an employee. You had it maybe during COVID, as more and more jobs, become a pressure cooker, that to the extent that that even exists anymore, that's going away. And then more franchises are than before COVID are open to starting a business with a GM, with a general manager that can help you run the business while you keep your day job. I mean, you do have to factor in the additional cost, which means it's going to take you longer to make money, but it's more of an option for people who have the money to invest. Now, how did the pandemic impact restaurants and foods? And is this currently a good place to be? I mean, this is probably the area where I get the most inquiries. Now, in the food space, obviously restaurants are still opening. I think a lot of that is just people, if they're passionate about something, it's about food. Maybe childcare or healthcare is the second most popular passion area, but food is something that people, connect to emotionally. In the franchise space, we are seeing more locations that are movable. We're talking about a truck or kiosk, upscale vending. I was talking to you about those vending machines. It's not chips and soda. And by the way, when you're looking for space for a vending machine, if you're selling chips and soda, you're competing with Coke and Pepsi. And even before COVID, it was very, very hard to find a decent space to put an independently owned vending machines. So now there's a lot more options for vending, which if you want to dip your toe into business while you keep your job, that's one of the few areas that you could probably do it without a general manager. That's what's happening in the restaurant industry. They're looking at grab and go, just like we did during COVID, grab and go, vend and go. I don't have to be there. My employees don't have to be there because I have to pay my employees to be there while somebody purchases my food. Menu offerings are scaling down for the experienced franchises. They're scaling down. You'll see the younger businesses put more and more things on their menu. That's usually kind of an act of desperation. The experienced franchises are scaling down in order to control their costs. As I was saying, more self-service options. And then the restaurants that are more expensive, where you're gonna, they're not gonna make it unless you buy the steak or the lobster. They're offering experiences. You're also seeing a merger of entertainment and food happening right now. The movie industry was hit very hard by COVID, which really was phase two of streaming. Streaming really hit the movie industry hard. Then COVID made people get used to watching movies from home. And they said, this is great. I don't need to go to the movie theater. I'm going to make my own food, save some money. In the meantime, the cost of a movie ticket went up. So what's happening is movie theaters are offering experiences and food in order to bring people back. And so you've got this merger. If you're a restaurant, you want to think about offering an experience. And this also plays into the need for a place for people to go on a date or for friends to get together. They're not going to drop $100 a person. And, some of the steak places, when you get into the food and drinks, it's $100 a person easily. They're not going to do that unless they can stay and linger and have an experience. So that's what's happening in the restaurant space. I think also in the restaurant space, you should be aware of the fact that food safety, foodborne illnesses have always been a factor, even for the most experienced restaurants and franchises. It's there have always been, even McDonald's that has one of the most um, built out supply chain networks in the franchise space. Even some of their franchisees will inadvertently serve somebody food that makes them sick. It happens. So now you have to look at what's happening in addition to sort of the normal stuff in the supply chain with everything going up. Maybe some of the food suppliers are not doing the same things that they used to do because their own labor costs are up. With the government shrinking, having shrunk, how much of that lack of oversight is actually being detected? It is a factor you must be aware of if you're going into the restaurant space. And I would say if you are going into the restaurant space, if you are open to nothing else but restaurants, which by the way is the second most expensive category in franchising, but if you only are going to go into business if you do it through a restaurant, really look very carefully at the amount of experience and oversight your franchise has. And, if you are doing it alone, I would say only do it if you're going into business with a very experienced restaurateur and know that your costs are going to go up, probably continue to go up as we have more and more impact from oil price increases. So here are the top opportunities to think about if you're thinking about going into business. Really pay attention to these spaces. This is where I find the most opportunity for somebody who is expanding their business or going into business for the first time. Beauty, fitness, and wellness. These are still high demand services. They are repeat business. People come back every 6 weeks or less to get the service again, to look better or feel better. And there's no shortage of need for people as they get older. They typically consume more and more of that as your hair gets gray, as hair starts to fall out, as your body doesn't digest calories as well as it did before. There's always increased demand for these services. This is still a wonderful space to be in, but also in the service sector generally, if your prices go up, it's easier to increase your prices. As long as your customers are still getting an excellent experience and you can impact that as well. You have control over that. They will begrudgingly pay more to come back because they can't imagine going anywhere else. Okay. Anything related to selling, fixing, or improving a house, I would add into that fixing or selling any property is going to be a great space because of all of the movement happening both on the residential side and on the business side. I don't know if you've been following some of the big moves that are happening. These are the ones that typically make the news with Amazon. I think it was no Google moving a lot of their operations to Texas. They haven't laid anyone off, but they predict that 90% of their workforce is going to go someplace else. That's somebody probably selling a home or buying a home or both. So something related to selling, fixing, or improving a house in the areas where a lot of the military bases in the DC area, throughout Virginia, there are always people who are buying and selling homes because people are working temporarily in a space. That's always been an excellent space to be. Now, because of all of the changes in the job market, changes in the business where people are doing business, that is on the upswing. But it's a very, very safe space to be if you are a business owner. Looking for opportunities to expand through finding a business where there's a family of franchises that are all in the same space. Where when you want to expand your business, you can launch a new franchise, which is using the same back end, just selling a different product or service to the same customer space. So I start off as a painting business, let's say, and then in a year, well, none of the other territory nearby is available. So now I'm going to go back to my family of brands and add on a deck repair business or a mosquito control business or something like that. Everybody's using the same software. You're working with the same trainers. It's a very easy way to launch a new division of your business through a franchise. And I think this is really a wonderful improvement that's really come about mainly because of all of the private equity and mergers and acquisitions happening within our industries. B2B franchises are a great opportunity. Businesses need help more than ever with coaching, with cost reduction, and these businesses can mostly be run from a laptop, which means you have wonderful work-life balance, but also the cost of doing business and starting the business is significantly lower. It could be a tenth of a cost of opening some of the restaurant franchises. So you don't want to, I would say, look at your options because if you can go into business for less money or more profitably, wouldn't anybody want to do this? Most people would say yes. Yes, they would want a business where they can save money or make more money or both. And these are some of the things that present the greatest opportunities. Franchises offer call centers, free up the time of the owners, which can give you, again, more flexibility, which is not just a nice thing too, because the less time you have to spend on the phone, it means you can spend more time growing your business or making sure that your employees are well managed. A lot of franchises are harnessing artificial intelligence. It's helping people find more customers. As a franchisee, you love to get the call or the email from somebody who just happened to find you on the website through no activity or spend on your own. More businesses that can be started with a general manager, maybe while you have your day job. Looking at using retirement funds instead of going into debt. It's something to look at. Like I said, it can be a way to save money when you start your business, but there could also be a tax advantage to it when you're ready to sell your business, maybe 10, 20 years down the line. The other opportunity that has been happening the past couple of years, some of the seasonal home services franchises, I mean, in Virginia and DC, the season I'm talking about is the warm months. There are certain franchises where people were making really good money during the warm months, but during the cold months, their customer didn't need the services. Now, a lot of these franchises are also offering services during the cold months, which means more money, but also it makes it easier to retain your employees because now you can keep them working all year long. And just in general, there's been greater interest in the boring service businesses. The podcasters have been talking about it. I hear some of the business school lecturers are talking about don't ignore the boring service. This is your safe space. These are essential. These are what has always been needed, and the demand for them right now is tremendous. Look at those. If you're considering retail and restaurants, at least take a look at boring service businesses too, and make sure you are making the smartest decision of how to utilize your time and your money. So some of the obstacles, traps that people fall into when they're looking at starting a business is leading with emotion, leading with passion. It's actually not the passion for the product or service that has been the key to success for most business owners. People start that way sometimes and they end up feeling really unhappy with their decision. I mean, imagine starting a business that sells pizza because you love the pizza, but now it's your business. You invest $1 million into your pizza business and you have to close down in 2 years because it's not profitable. The passion that you will feel, the reason you will stay in business is because you pick a business where you have the right skill set, your skills that you've developed in your job are similar to the skills of other franchisees who are successful. You have enough time to run it, you have enough money to run it. If you can find that, and the franchise, you know that the franchise makes money as long as you have enough time, money, and the correct skill set, that is going to be something that you keep forever until you decide that you want to pass it on to your kids or to sell it one day, and that becomes your retirement nest egg. Don't lead with passion for the product or service. Think of it like you maybe thought of your career. Whatever career you have, you went into it because you like the work. It pays enough. The time that you spend in it is acceptable to you, okay? It gives you enough time to spend with your friends and family. Think of the business the same way as opposed to, I love the pizza. Okay, this is a big mistake that people make a lot of times going into business. You don't need to come from the industry. The statistic I saw was less than 25% of franchisees are in a business in the same industry that they were employed in. But you have to have the right skill set. That is really going to be critical. The franchise, though, brings the knowledge of the customer, brings the knowledge of the vendor, brings the knowledge of how to reach your customer, the marketing side. They have that. You have to have the right business skills, and every franchise is different. Be careful going into business with a partner. Partnerships a lot of times don't work out. You don't want to have to sell your business or try to get your partner to buy you out because you're clashing heads. A lot of people who go into business with friends never talk to the friend again. And imagine going into business with your relative and the two of you couldn't agree on a business decision, which, by the way, those decisions almost always are about money. And now you can't talk to your relative again. It's a terrible situation. My advice is to try to start a business on your own. And after you have your business started, if you find that you still need an investor, then you can, have the investor maybe help you open up another location or something like that, while you still retain control of all of the decisions that the company is making. Okay. Don't forget, if somebody invests with you money wise, they're also going to expect to get that chunk of the profit. So if you're looking at a business where you're hoping the business is going to generate enough income for you to live on, don't forget your partner is going to expect some of that income coming in if they invested. Okay. Don't hire the wrong kind of attorney to review your documents. When you go into business through a franchise, you're going to get a franchise disclosure document, also known as an FDD, and a franchise agreement. When the franchise agreement is going to be it's going to be listed as an exhibit or an addendum to your franchise disclosure document. You can hire an attorney to look through it. If you're nervous about what it says and is this something that I should be signing, you can hire an attorney to look through it. That will give you peace of mind. Just don't hire a business attorney to review a franchise agreement. The attorney you hire has to have knowledge of what I'm sorry, they have to have knowledge of what the industry standard is. They have to understand if they're asking for changes. Most of the changes you will not get. The franchisor is not going to give you a better deal, a better arrangement than your other franchisees. It wouldn't be fair. It also might cause infighting, right, within the franchise. So hire a franchise lawyer if you're going to hire a lawyer at all. To review your agreement. And then be careful, as I said before, if you have a day job or you own other businesses, make sure you truly have enough time and enough flexibility to run this new business. Make sure that you talk to some of their franchisees. If you know you only have 20 hours a week to put into a business and you're going to have a day job, make sure you can find other franchisees who are successfully running it that way. Okay. Um, so these are the biggest opportunities. Businesses that can make people feel better, look better, um, businesses that can help other businesses save money, especially as business costs go up, as some of their customers go down. You can literally rescue other businesses. And I was saying before, cost-wise, these businesses cost a lot less to open than anything in retail. Businesses that serve the aging population, businesses where you can become an entrepreneur by acquiring another company that already has customers, businesses that help people sell their homes, get it ready for sale, painting, repair, um, anything that can make a business a property look more appealing to a buyer, it's a great place to be. Also, businesses that help people move, and that includes junk removal, that includes moving experiences. There are some really interesting opportunities, industry disruptors right now in the moving space that are helping people move a lot less painfully than the other players in the industry. And if you've moved recently, you know what I'm talking about. There's a lot of shady stuff happening in the space. Wouldn't you like to be a company that gives people a wonderful experience? I feel like you are going to get so much free publicity that way, and demand for services in that space. Um, and then franchises that are actually harnessing artificial intelligence, other cutting edge technology, businesses that are offering a call center that'll free up your time. And a lot of franchises will also help you train your employees, which is going to also free up your time, but also going to give you a much more consistent flow of business. So other things to know, if you are going into business, I suggest that you view this as a 5-year project at minimum. It's going to take you, even in the best franchise, about 5 years to ramp up so that somebody else might be truly interested in buying your business because they're going to start to see that you now have more consistent revenue coming in. The first 2 years are definitely going to be a hustle. It doesn't have to be unpleasant, but you don't know when your first big customers are coming in. So make sure that you start your business during a time in your life when you have the most amount of time. And then in a lot of businesses, after a couple of years, you can cut back and you'll have some employees that you can trust at that point too, who that you can delegate more tasks to. When you sell your business, it can take 2 years. It could take less too, but there are some businesses where it takes 2 years to sell. So when you're ready, when you're thinking of selling, give yourself a 2-year runway in case you need it. Um, and then the other thing to think about is that some franchises will actually help you find your buyer. You have to understand how it works. Your franchisor is going to be involved. They're going to help your potential franchisee get up to speed as quickly as possible. Some franchisors will put the word out to the business broker and the franchise broker community, letting them know there's a great resale opportunity, which could be means shortening the amount of time it takes to sell your business. You also might be able to save some money on using a business broker. And franchises can be bought and sold just like independent businesses too. Um, but you also have the franchisor to help you. So if you're still thinking about a franchise and you can, and maybe some of you are going through this process already, some other things to keep in mind. As a franchise owner, you do have to be somewhat of a system follower in order to be successful. You have to be coachable, somebody who is willing to take the coaching, do the things that the franchise trains you to do. You might even want to go through training more than once just to make sure that you remember all the things that they told you to do. But there are certain things that you're going to say, I think I want to try this. And your franchise is going to say, no, you can't do that. You can't offer that under our name. So you have to be okay with that. It's definitely a trade-off. I think that people who are successful in franchises, who stay with franchises for a long period of time, they're at peace with the fact that they can't offer everything because they see the tremendous advantage that they get through the franchise, through all the things that you see here, the shorter amount of time that it takes them to make money, all of the vendors, all of the work that the franchise provides to them. It's a trade-off, but you have to be okay with this is how we do it, and here's some things that we don't do. Also, I think franchises, most of them are for a more serious business person. Most franchises are not for a hobbyist. There are some exceptions. My second business is a travel agency. We do this. I'm not saying it's a hobby, but it is a side business for us. And so we don't care about the income. Most people, most franchises, they give you exclusive territory, they give you a ton of help, a ton of mentoring, but they want somebody who really is going to be serious about running the business, who isn't going to take off for a couple of months and just not do business because they don't want to. So that's something to keep in mind, especially if you have exclusive territory. There's going to be consequences of just not working for a couple of months without a plan to have your employees take up some of that slack. So, again, you have a contract. You're paying a franchisor to do a lot of work for you. If you've exclusive territory, they're going to expect to do it in exchange for a royalty. You do pay a royalty. It's an ongoing fee, usually tied to your gross sales of the franchise. That keeps them wanting to work for you. They have a staff of people that they have to pay. They also own the franchise, and they're going to have to get some money out of that from you for their effort as the owners of the business. You pay a one-time franchise fee to join, basically covers all of the training, all of the recruiting, all of the legal work that they have to do to set you up in their system. Think of it as maybe a tuition that you would have to pay in order to get a certification that you need for work. That's also, similar to what a franchise fee might be, but it's a one-time fee. But royalties are ongoing because they have a staff of people who they've essentially hired to work for you and the other franchisees. Um, and when people evaluate franchises, I mean, they're looking at, of course, what am I getting for the royalty? And, obviously nobody is going to stay with a franchise if they're not getting value. So when you're investigating a franchise, you want to ask other franchisees, is it worth it? Based on the royalty that you're paying, are you getting enough customers through the franchise to justify it? Are you getting enough marketing support? Are you getting enough IT support? Things that either you'd have to hire somebody else to do anyway, or maybe things that you would have to do on your own. But if you were doing those things, you wouldn't have as much time to grow your business or to manage your employees. Okay. Um, be careful with the really well-known food franchises, especially. You are very vulnerable to anything happening anywhere in those systems. The press loves to write about the McDonald's franchise where somebody ate a bad tomato. That's going to make national news, and you are going to lose business even if it wasn't in your store. So just remember that sometimes it's not great to be necessarily famous at that national level. I think this sweet spot in franchising, and I've said this on other webinars too, is you find a franchise. It's historically proven to work in many different types of markets, including, of course, markets that are just like yours. And the franchise should be able to show you demographic data to prove that. And it's a little under the radar. Also, but then the other thing you want to look for is make sure that franchise has a solid grand opening program. There are a lot of franchises where you will be well known within your market, which is all you care about, within a month. Okay, so is it worth it to buy the name brand where you're also at risk of losing business? Or is it better for you to get into the market? You control the quality of the product or the service within your market, and your franchisor makes sure that if you do all of these things, your whole area, especially, I mean, specifically your customer, target customer, knows that you're there in a very short amount of time. I think that's actually the better place to be in franchising. But here are all the things the franchise can give you, all the support, all of the history. They know how to do things the correct way so that you make less mistakes and become profitable quicker. And it's not just the franchise, you also have colleagues, other franchisees are going to help you as well. So in order to choose your business, you really want to take account of your skill set. There's different franchises for people with different skills. You don't have to sell, but in some franchises you do. So if you're good at management, you pick a particular kind of franchise versus sales without management versus sales with management versus customer service. Different franchises for people who come into it with a different set of skills. You just don't need the industry experience rather. Um, so your short-term strategy at the end of the day is to find a business that you can get into where you won't fail. And the more that you follow this process that I'm starting to lay out for you, and the more research you do, you're going to increase your odds of success. I don't like getting the call from people who tell me they're finished with their research, they just need the name of a lawyer, franchise lawyer. They haven't called any franchisees. So, they really don't know anything about how well this franchise does when people like them in their geographic area start. That's a really critical part of the research. Long term, you want to make sure you're picking a business. This business, you're going to be the CEO of a business. This is going to be your career. Even if you have another career, this is going to be part of your career. Pick a business, pick a career that gives you the money you want and the lifestyle that you want. But also, it's not just about the money. I mean, people are usually looking for other things in addition. Um, the things here in red, control over your life, flexibility. I mean, all the things that you listed that you said, this is what I'm looking for that I'm not currently getting as an employee. Make sure you talk to franchisees and people are actually getting those things. And then when you exit, make sure that your franchise is something that you can sell. I mean, some franchises command more money than others. Most people, honestly, when they get into business, they're looking for income. The resale value is an added perk. Okay, but if you're looking for the income, talk to people, make sure they're making the kind of income you're looking for. But then if you're looking for resale value, maybe this is a kind of a retirement job for you, but you want to build up equity, you want to pass along generational wealth to your family. Talk to franchisees, find out what people have sold their business for. Also, speaking of a retirement job, a lot of people in business work much longer than they would have if they were just an employee because they can do it. It's fun. They're doing it part-time. It keeps their mind young. It gives them a purpose every day, right? Having a business can be really fun. And can be a great way when you're retired, even if you have a lot of money in your account, it's painful to start cutting into that money. So having something that can generate income for you in retirement also feels really good. And then for some of you, maybe you're thinking, I want to create not just generational wealth, but I want to build up a business that I can get my kids into. Involve your kids in the conversation about what kind of business it could be. Make sure it's something, if your kids are old enough, make sure it's something that they actually would want to get into. Okay. There are thousands of choices. You're not going to be able to open up every franchise in your area. There are 13 registration states. Virginia is one of them. There are a lot of franchises you can't open up in Virginia. Um, so make sure that your franchise is something you can actually open up in your state. There's a huge cost range. Some franchises you can start for under 50K. I will tell you that the businesses where the franchise income can actually pay the expenses of somebody who is living in Virginia and the DC area, typically costs at least $60,000. Under $50,000, vending machines and things like that, they're typically add-on businesses or side hustles. Travel businesses would fall into this category. People aren't usually able to live off of the income from those businesses. So if you're thinking about getting into something because you want a business that can generate income that you can live off of, think about a budget of at least 60K. You don't need retail, but if you get into retail these days around any major metropolitan area, you're probably spending at least $400,000. So you don't have to spend $400,000. Look at maybe some of the service businesses if you don't have that kind of money. Here's some books I can recommend. If you want some hand-holding and guidance throughout this process, reach out, take our assessment. This doesn't cost you anything. We want you to make a really smart decision. We don't want you to go into business if there's a chance you're going to fail. There's always a chance you're going to fail, but we can significantly reduce the chances of failure if you actually follow this process. So do reach out, do take the entrepreneur profile, see what it says, and if you're open to some coaching, let us talk about businesses that you should be looking for you. Typically, the search process, if you do all the steps, which you absolutely should do as part of your diligence, should take about 3 months to get through. Okay, that is the end of the program. Here's how you can get in touch with me. If you would like some free guidance from somebody who has a lot of experience, I wish you luck, but also, there is a process that hopefully you're seeing you can follow to not just rely on luck, to really increase your chances of becoming a very successful business owner in an in-demand industry.
Thank you, Heather. That was a
You're
lot of
welcome.
great information. And we don't have a single question. So I would say you provided a lot of great information and didn't leave anyone with anything to wonder. But like you said, if they have anything, please reach out to Heather and she can answer your questions. Um, any final words of wisdom?
Yeah, I mean, final word of wisdom is, it doesn't matter politically where you are. There is opportunity out there. It's not necessarily in the same space as you're seeing as it was 5 years ago, but there's a lot of great opportunity. There is a lot of change, which a lot of people don't, they delay their decision to get into business because they're worried about changes or potential changes. I'm here to tell you there are businesses that it doesn't matter what the change is, they will survive or thrive. So, don't wait until you think there's going to be a time where there's no change. I don't know that that'll ever happen. But also by then you might be, you might not have the energy that you have today. You also might not have the money that you have today. So go for it. There's a lot of diligence you're going to do before you make this decision, but don't just not look for your business. If you have a really good reason to go into business, let's look for it. Let's find it. There's a lot of things out there which are very, very safe.
Heather, thank you so much. I want to thank everyone else who joined us today and remind you that you will receive an email with a link to this recording. If you would like to sign up for upcoming webinars or access recorded webinars, please visit virginiasbdc.org/training. These resources are designed to be used in collaboration with your local SBDC advisors. You can sign up for a free and confidential session by emailing help@virginiasbdc.org or via our website. And we hope to see you all at our next session. Take care, everyone.